All right, now we're in statistics section 2, visualizing data. So this means we're going to be looking at some graphs for some data. So a bar graph is one way to represent qualitative data. So I would just make a little note that bar graphs are for qualitative. The horizontal axis shows the different values of the variable, and the vertical axis shows the frequency or relative frequency, which we learned about in the last video. Each bar shows the frequency for that data value, and the bars do not touch. Oops, I meant to highlight that. So a couple things to keep in mind for a bar graph. They're used for qualitative data, and the bars do not touch. So we're going to make a bar graph for major and frequency. So I'm going to make a vertical line and a horizontal line. And the highest frequency is 6. We usually go a little bit higher than that though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just label 1 through 8 here. And then we need to have a biology, education, poli-sci, political science, graphic design, GD, and undecided. Those are the 5 categories that we have. So for biology, it goes up to 6. So I'm going to draw a rectangle that goes as high as 6. And then if you'd like, you can take a highlighter and like fill that in. Not necessary, but fun. Education only goes up to 1, so we're going to draw a rectangle just going up to 1. And I think I'll do all the highlighting at the end. Political science is frequency of 3. So I'm going to go as high as 3 with my rectangle. And try to draw all of your rectangles approximately the same size. We usually have technology make these things for us because humans aren't very good at keeping things uniform. And if you make one rectangle much smaller or bigger than others, it could make the reader think that there's something different going on there. So there's 2 graphic design. My rectangle there seems to have gotten a little wider. I didn't mean for it to. And then undecided is 4. So we go up to 4 and make a rectangle. All right, I'm going to take a highlighter and just color all of these in. And that's it. We have a graphical view of the data. So the frequency table that we are given is helpful, but it's also really helpful to see visually what's going on. All right, example 2, the bar graph is already given to us. We just have to answer some questions about it. What type of car was most available? So you look for the rectangle that goes up the highest, and that was the SUV one. What percent of cars were sports cars? So I find sports, and then we go over to the left to where it says the percentage, and it's 10%. Which cars made up less than 5%? So we're looking at the rectangles that are below the 5% line, and those are hatchback and wagon. So you might be thinking, well, what about the minivan? So minivan is on exactly 5%, and this is less than 5%. So we don't want to include minivan in our answers. What percent of cars on the market were sedans? So we're going to go up to a sedan and then follow the top of that rectangle over to the percentages, and it looks like it's about 33%. So sometimes you just have to guesstimate if it's between two values. Another way to visualize qualitative data is through a pie chart. A pie chart takes a circle and divides the circle according to the relative size of each category. So for the car model that we just did, that's what the pie chart would look like. So you can see that in the pie chart, SUVs take up the biggest slice, followed by sedan. And then we have wagon and hatchback as our less than 5%, minivan exactly 5%, and sports 10%. All right, part 2 is where we're going to visualize quantitative data, and one of the ways of doing that is with a histogram. So a histogram looks kind of like a bar chart, but the big difference is that there are no spaces. So the bars of a histogram touch. Actually, I'm going to highlight those. So if you're doing qualitative data, you're going to use a bar chart or pie chart. But for quantitative, use a histogram where the bars do not touch. So we're going to make a histogram for the frequency table on wins. I don't know what the wins are for, but that's okay. I can still make the table. Okay, so again, we need a vertical axis, so it's going up and down, and then a horizontal. And I'm going to use my whiteout here for that, for these words that aren't even correct, but they should be fixed on your paper. All right, so we're going to use the classes. If you remember from our first statistics video, we have these classes. Since there's a lot of data here, we group them into, looks like there's 5 in each, the class width is 5 for each one. So we want to label those on the horizontal. So we start with the bottom 25 to 29. And then you're going to put a little bit of a space between each class, but not a lot because these bars are going to touch. (55 to 59), and then got to go a little bit further, 60 to 69, or 65. This should be 60 to 64, yeah. Yeah, I'll fix that last one. 60 to 64. Barely had room on there. And then the highest frequency is 10, so we need to go a little bit higher than 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, I'll do one more, 12. And it's good to label them because it makes it a little easier to draw the graph. Again, computers are much better at doing this than we are. As you can see in example 2, we have a nice computer histogram, but you get some value out of drawing them yourself. So 25 to 29 only has 1, so I'm just going to draw my rectangle. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit nicer than that because I can, like so. And then touching the 30 to 34 range goes up to 5. So I'm going to use the edge of my last rectangle and go up to 5. And again, the width of all these rectangles should be the same. Of course, we're human, so they're not going to be, but And then I just noticed that my my line for 5 was really crooked, so I'm fixing that. There we go. That's better. Except now it's not at the top of that one. There we go. So you can see that the spaces I have between the numbers is also not even, and it's supposed to be. So that's where technology would be our friend. The 40 to 44 group goes up to 9. Yeah, my bars always end up a little wonky looking. And then the next group goes to 4. And 50 to 54. Ooh, that goes all the way up to 10. So we drop to 10. And then 50 to 59. Both the last ones are just 1. So I'm going to draw one straight line across and then just split it. And those are obviously not the same width, but that's okay. The point is you got some experience drawing a histogram. And like the last one, I do want to color it in. You can see that I'm not great at coloring either. But they do look so much better when they're colored in. All right. And then example 2, we're given a histogram and we're just going to answer some questions about it. So how many teams are there based on the graph? For that question, I like to go ahead and put the frequency, like label it on each rectangle or each bar. So for instance, that one, the highest one is 9. And then here we have 6, 3, and 1. And that's also convenient if you're asked questions about, for example, the second one, how many teams score between 200 and 219. Now I can just look at that bar and I see that there's 4 teams. How many teams are there based on the graph? So that we have to add up all of those values that we just labeled. And when I did that, I got, I think 31. What percent of the teams scored between 260 and 279? So that's 6 teams. And if I divide that by the total, that gives me the relative frequency 0.1935.